I saw something that, the false flag, this was staged, is a big thing in MAGA world. But I'm hearing that from on my social media pages from people on the left also thinking that this was staged, that this was a false flag.
The chickens have come home to roost. That's the phrase I've been thinking about for the past 12 or 16 hours when I look at the increasingly widespread reaction of the American people to the shooting at the White House Correspondents Dinner. And to be clear, I'm not referring to the shooting itself, but rather the reaction to the shooting, which is increasingly numerous and increasingly bipartisan. And what do I mean? Well, since day one, conspiracism and conspiracy theories have been at the heart of the MAGA movement. Since day one, Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans have reflexively and baselessly claimed that anything and everything they don't like or that they find inconvenient is fake or rigged or a sham or a hoax or staged. And now Trump and MAGA Republicans are furious because those claims have been flipped on them. They are now facing claims and accusations that the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, as well as the first assassination attempt against Donald Trump back in Butler, Pennsylvania in 2024, were all staged by Trump and MAGA for Trump to benefit politically. And thus I say the chickens are coming home to roost. And this is something that both MAGA and the American people writ large have to deal with. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, folks, before we dive into the reaction, the thing that really prompted me to make this video wasn't just the reaction itself, but something that Trump said in an interview with Fox News earlier this morning. And he talked about the shooting quite a bit, but in this specific clip I'm going to refer to, he's actually referring to the Virginia ballot referendum from earlier this week that allowed Virginia Democrats to gerrymander 4 seats away from the Republicans in the gerrymandering war that Trump started. Here was Trump's reaction to that.
Because I happen to think that there are a lot of cheating going on in Virginia, frankly. And they were leading all day long. We were leading, meaning I guess you'd call it the Republicans. And I said, when did you see the end? All of a sudden there was a ballot drop. But the courts have taken it up. And
so Donald Trump facing an electoral defeat in Virginia, where Democrats prevailed over Republicans, his immediate response, and it was his response at the time, and it's his response now, days later, is to claim baselessly that it was fake and rigged. That he just can't possibly, Trump can't lose a free and fair election. He can't ever lose. He's perfect. He's beyond reproach. There's no way he and his party can lose. So if they do lose, it must be because Democrats cheated. It was a fake election. It was a rigged election. Now, what I find so fascinating about that is it's such, again, a snapshot into his psyche and the psyche of the MAGA movement, which is now turning on them in terms of the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, but also the shooting from 2 years ago in Butler, Pennsylvania. Somebody posted on Twitter, got to be demoralizing for right-wing guys seeing conspiracy theories immediately defanging your big political moment. Hassan Piker responds with, not going to lie, I get why they do it all the time. John Fusseling, a Democratic pundit, a liberal, says, live your life so that if you face multiple assassinations attempts, millions of people, right, left, and center, won't all simultaneously tweet that it's staged. I posted this as well. I said, claims the shooting was staged are all over my timeline on social media and in my YouTube comments, and they have been. Much of my audience on my live stream last night and in every video I've done about the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, many of you and many of those comments believe that this thing was staged, that it was fake, that it was not real. So I said, it's ironic that MAGA spent so many years baselessly claiming everything they didn't like was faked or rigged, that they're going to hear a lot of it now from the other side, and they're going to hate it. Matt Walsh, who is a prominent MAGA Republican, he's furious. This is what he said. Just to be clear, the theory that leftists are running with is that the Trump administration somehow convinced a registered Democrat, he's not a registered Democrat, Cole Thomas Allen is registered with no party affiliation, no party preference. Now, in 2024, 2 years ago, he donated $25 petty cash to Act Blue, which is a fundraising group for Democrats, but that's it, not a registered Democrat, to volunteer to go to prison for the rest of his life so they could use him as a patsy for a third-stage assassination attempt, one that they apparently believe was concocted mostly to justify building a White House ballroom that's already being built anyway. That's their theory of the case here. And when you phrase it like that, it does seem rather absurd, as most conspiracy theories do, as most conspiracism does. But Matt Walsh is an infamous conspiracy theorist. He's one of the biggest conspiracy theorists, not just at the Daily Wire, but in the right-wing movement in general. Think about every conspiracy theory that we've heard, that it's the Democratic Party. I mean, Pizzagate, anything from Jack Posobiec, that the Democrats are running a secret cabal, where they're trying to drain the adrenochrome of America's youths to live forever, right? Think of QAnon. Think of the 2020 election. So when Trump is in power, Democrats are able to successfully steal an election from him. But when Democrats are in power and thus have more power in 2024, they're unable to steal the election from Trump? How does that make any sense? And furthermore, if they were able to steal the election from Trump in 2020, why didn't they steal it from every other Republican in the same election? How did any Republican win victories in 2020? If they were able to rob Trump at the presidential election in 2020, despite being out of power, why weren't they able to do it to lesser Republicans, like Republican Senate candidates or Republican congressional candidates? None of it makes sense. But that's a conspiracy theory in a nutshell, right? It's far-fetched. It's absurd. It usually lacks an internal consistent logic. I just think it's hilarious that Matt Walsh is just now like the little light bulb over his head. Like, well, this conspiracy theory doesn't make any sense. And people are responding to this. Just a completely normal, uncoordinated reaction. And they have example after example after example after example of people immediately coming out to defend the ballroom. This is why we need the ballroom. This is why we need the ballroom. Meghan McCain, Randy Fine, who's a Republican congressman, Tom Fitton, who's a MAGA cultist of the Judicial Watch, Sean Farish, Buzz Patterson, Jack Posobiec, legendary conspiracy theorist, Andrew Colvett, who is running Turning Point USA's podcast now. He used to be Charlie Kirk's podcaster. Libs of TikTok, another conspiracy theorist, etc. and so forth. So people are using MAGA logic against MAGA, and MAGA is pissed. Andrew Wilson, who is a prominent right-wing debater, I debated him on Tim Pool. It was Tim Pool, Myron Gaines of Fresh and Fit, and Tim Pool versus Luke Beasley and I about a year ago. One of the best debaters on the right. He's hanging a lampshade on this. Quote, "It was staged. LOL. While my side is morally and politically correct, it's truly a shame the leftist has 10 or 15-point IQ advantage over the average conservative." Andrew, throughout a series of posts I'm going to show you, is acknowledging that right-wing conspiracism is now backfiring on the right. He says, the right-wing influencer space has become a political spectacle of conspiracy theories which the left capitalizes on. They use your own gullible nature and stupidity against you. David Pakman, prominent liberal political commentator, says this. He says, the more that right-wingers talk about the ballroom, the more it's going to seem staged to many people. Jumping from, quote, security should have been better in the lobby to, quote, build Trump's scam bribe ballroom is just ridiculous. Andrew Wilson responded to this. He goes, this is why I think the right is stupid. These people play into your delusions. Pakman doesn't think this is staged at all. He knows you do, though, and will push the feeding frenzy to serve his ends. And if you look at staged, it's trending. Like every comment, I'm telling you, my comment feed, or my social media feed and my YouTube comments are inundated. It's fake, it's rigged, it's staged, it's fake, it's rigged, it's staged, it's fake, it's rigged. That's how people are responding to me. I see it all over social media. It's stunning. And we're going to play a clip in just a second, but Michael Knowles, again of the Daily Wire, quote, "It was staged" is nothing more than a polite way of saying one wishes the shooter had succeeded. No, that's not the case. It's just that people are now predisposed to distrust this administration so much because of this administration and because of years and years and years of MAGA conditioning the American people to say that everything they don't like or find inconvenient or find untrustworthy is fake or rigged or staged. As staged. That's what this is. This is, again, the chickens coming home to roost. This is the result of QAnon and Pizzagate and the 2020 election conspiracy theories and all the others. And again, even Trump, as we speak, saying the Virginia election was rigged, it was stolen. And when people look at certain things, so again, I want you to think about this, okay? It doesn't help when you have this. So at the red carpet, before the shooting took place, okay, at the White House Correspondents Dinner, listen to Carolyn Levitt, because this clip has gone viral.
It'll be funny. It'll be entertaining. There will be some shots fired tonight in the room. So everyone should tune in. It's going to be really great.
Now, again, I'm sure she meant shots fired in the sense that during Trump's monologue, during Trump's speech, he was going to take jabs at the media. But she used the phrase shots fired, which is fairly common. And then, of course, about an hour later, literal shots were fired by an attempted shooter. So you have that clip, right? And again, conspiracy theorists and skeptics are saying, what the hell does that mean? Then you have this, which went viral as well. This is a Fox reporter calling in to Fox News from the scene of the crime, from the White House Correspondents Dinner. Check it out.
I want to just quickly tell you, I was sitting next to Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary's husband. He was one of our guests. He was seated right next to me. And, right as the dinner was starting, the national anthem happened. And then he kind of leaned over and said, I watched you on TV. You do a great job. You need to be very safe. And he was just very serious when he said that to me. And he kind of looked around the room and he said, there are some.
Sounds like we lost Aisha's phone there.
So Aisha Hasni, the Fox News correspondent, lost service at a time that she was talking about some strange remarks made by Caroline Leavitt's husband. Okay. Now, again, if you looked at reporting at the time, I saw this. There were multiple reports, CNN and so many others, saying that the reception here is atrocious, that phone calls were being dropped, text messages weren't going through. That was a bipartisan consensus. It was hard for the reporters at the scene to call in to their news outlets, to CNN, to Fox, to ABC, to CBS. That's how I would interpret this, that the call was dropped. But given what she was talking about and given the state of conspiracism and conspiracy theories in this country, a lot of people are choosing that to interpret, Fox dropped the call because this person was saying things which suggested the shooting was pre-planned. Then people are pointing to J.D. Vance being removed by Secret Service quicker than Trump was, and he's only the vice president. This clip has gone viral as well. Vance being hauled off stage. Secret Service is surrounding Trump, but Trump remains on stage a lot longer than Vance does. So, again, these clips are going viral, and people are choosing to interpret them in a conspiratorial way. But it's not just this shooting as well. As Wired has noted, the Wired magazine, about a week ago, MAGA is increasingly convinced the Trump assassination attempt was staged, but they're referring to Butler. They're referring to, the fight, the one where he got hit in the ear. MAGA is now convinced that was staged. Conspiracy theories about the Butler, Pennsylvania shooting have ramped up in recent weeks as once steadfast Trump supporters turn on the president. In recent weeks, as criticism of Donald Trump from his own supporters has reached a fever pitch, a new conspiracy theory has taken hold. Some of Trump's biggest supporters are now claiming, without evidence, that Trump staged the assassination attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania in 2024 and is covering it up. During an open-air campaign rally, and again, it goes back into the facts of it, which I'm sure most of you know, so we don't need to relitigate that. The shooter was later killed by Secret Service agents. Conspiracy theories around the Butler assassination quickly permeated the internet. But for many Trump supporters, his survival was seen as a sign from God that he was the chosen one. As Trump's hold over MAGA has waned, though, an increasing number of his own supporters have begun to push the narrative that the entire incident was staged. Quote, "I think maybe it was staged," said comedian Tim Dillon, who was MAGA adjacent. Dillon, who was previously a staunch Trump supporter, went on to share Trump now should come out and say, quote, "Some people are going to be upset by this, but we staged the assassination attempt in Butler to show people how important it was to vote for me and how far I was willing to go for them." That's Tim Dillon. Some of these claims began months ago. In November, former Fox News pundit Tucker Carlson promoted the idea that the FBI was somehow involved in covering up the shooting, writing on X that the, quote, "FBI lied about the shooter's online footprint." A day later, conservative pundit Esmeralda Robinson, I thought it was Emerald. Anyway, Esmeralda Robinson went further, posting on X that the FBI, quote, "did it." In the same post, Robinson claimed that the agency was responsible for everything from the January 6th attack on the Capitol to, quote, Jeffrey Epstein's blackmail tapes to, quote, Governor Whitmer fake kidnap plot. But the claims that Trump had staged the entire thing really picked up steam when former U.S. Counterterrorism Center Director Joe Kent appeared on Tucker's podcast last month, one day after he resigned his position over the Iran war. And he goes on and on and on like this. The overwhelming majority of the hundreds of replies, almost all of whom remain Trump supporters, said they believe the incident had been staged and that the truth may never come out. Many claims about the Butler conspiracy theory have also involved discussion of the Israeli government's reported control over the U.S. government that strongly echo classic anti-Semitism. The allegation was then echoed by Candace Owens, another prominent MAGA figure. Owens claimed that Trump had taken $100 million from Miriam Adelson in donations, but had not followed through on his promise to support Israel's annexation of the West Bank, and that this was the reason for the attempted assassination. Ali Alexander, the far-right activist who organized the Stop the Steal campaign in the wake of the 2020 presidential election, has a slightly different take on the assassination, claiming instead that it was further evidence that Trump is the Antichrist, something that many MAGA figures have been reconsidering this week. It goes on and on and on like this. So it's not just this shooting at the White House Correspondents Dinner. It's also the most iconic of the Trump attempts against him going back to 2024. Now, again, the question would be, how would you even do that? CNN's done a report on this. Was it too iconic in the hours after a man tried to assassinate Trump? Baseless conspiracy theories about the shooting, and that photo in particular, flooded the internet, saying that it was too good to be true, arguing that the incident must have been staged to boost his campaign. More than a year into Trump's second term, the claim has acquired new life, now among prominent people in the MAGAverse, disillusioned with the man they once supported. So let's see. Assassination and attempted assassinations, combining both politics and crime, have proved especially ripe for claims that they were staged. The implication appears to be older than the word itself. The Butler incident, which unfolded on camera in front of thousands of ordinary witnesses, as well as reporters and photographers from major news organizations, didn't seem to leave much room for speculation about what happened. But the urge to find a more dramatic story in it seems irresistible. Claims about who supposedly staged the attempt have varied depending on the source. Different people across the political spectrum have, without evidence, pointed the finger at Joe Biden, the FBI, Israel, and even Trump himself. Theories about what was staged and how are similarly underdeveloped. Those insinuating that the attempt was an orchestrated plot have sought to raise questions about the FBI's investigation into the shooting, a lack of clarity around the shooter's motive, and Trump's supposed lack of interest in discussing the event. What they don't much engage with is the exceedingly complicated logistics and coordination that performing a fake assassination attempt in public would entail. And again, it goes on like this. But as people raise questions about the Butler incident, they generally skip over one central question. Would it even be possible to have staged the events that day? How would anyone go about overlaying a fictional action sequence into a live event in real time? Spencer Parsons, an associate professor of media production at the Northwestern University and an independent filmmaker who has staged shooting scenes, gamely agreed to explore the hypothetical scenario of what it would have taken to stage the assassination attempt. He does not personally believe that it was staged. Parsons says the first things to consider is how many people are typically involved in staging a shooting for normal on-screen production. The director, camera operators, camera technicians, lighting technicians, sound engineers, special effects coordinators, safety coordinators, and so on. Now consider how a few people would need to be involved to keep something as monumental as a faked assassination attempt on a presidential candidate's secret. This is the big one. We live in a modern age with cell phones and everything else. Conspiracies are incredibly hard to maintain, and the more people who are involved in a conspiracy theory, it gets infinitely more difficult, right? This isn't the MCU. This isn't Captain America and the Winter Soldier, where you have a vast Hydra conspiracy operating for decades without anyone finding out. It's just not possible. When production crews stage a shooting, they have total control over the cameras. They can shoot multiple takes. They can manipulate angles to create certain illusions, which can take hours. They can add special effects in post-production, which can take weeks. Staging a shooting in the round at a live event with mere seconds to pull it off would allow for none of this. There would be only one take. Journalists with professional cameras and spectators with smartphones would leave no room for digital manipulation. Every detail would need to be physically coordinated with exacting precision. Parsons says the supposed staging team would need to position the fake assassin in a way that will allow the public to see him and thus make it seem real, at the same time allow him to fire before law enforcement or security personnel who weren't participating in the performance could notice and shoot him first. Quote, "This is the big bet," says Parsons. Quote, "You have to have kind of perfect timing in order to make something like that happen." Then there's the issue of the fake assassin himself. The task would require an extraordinarily skilled marksman, someone who could aim close enough to the candidate's head to make it look like he'd intended to hit him without actually hitting him. Acquaintances of the gunman who tried to shoot Trump told reporters that he was rejected from his high school's rifle club because he was such a bad shot. And to make the situation believable, the Secret Service would have to kill the designated shooter before he opened fire. An outcome the person in the gun-wielding role either wouldn't anticipate or would be willing to accept. The killing of Corey Compatore adds another dead body to the hypothetical stage directions, or else marks things going hideously off script, still without breaking the surrounding secrecy. And again, it goes on like this. The point being, it's absurd to think that this was fake or staged. But this is the increasingly common perception. And also people were discussing it on MS Now earlier today. They dedicated an entire segment to the increasingly numerous and increasingly bipartisan notion that the shooting at the White House Correspondents Dinner was staged. Take a look.
Guys, an extraordinary last 12,
14 hours.
13, 14, 15 hours in this country. One thing that I'm disturbed by as we woke up this morning is seeing folks on the internet say that this was a false flag, that we are basically all in cahoots
That it was
to
staged.
say that this was staged. And I think as someone who, for all of us, who was in the room, who had to jump on the ground, who had to text our family and friends and tell them that we're okay, calling our moms, like so many people in this country have done for decades. To see people say those kinds of things, it is frustrating and it's disturbing. It shows the issues that we have to try and fix in this country. And I think nothing taught us anything better than the importance of journalists being on the ground, in the room, for moments of historic significance than last night, us all dropping to the ground and literally like 5 seconds later, phones up and around so that the American people get a firsthand account of what's happening in a room where the most powerful people, including the president and vice president of the United States, were at.
I saw something that, the false flag, this was staged, is a big thing in MAGA world. But I'm hearing that on my social media pages from people on the left also thinking that this was staged, that this was a false flag, that this was something being done on purpose. And hearing you speak, Eugene, if it's coming from the right and it's coming from the left, these conspiracy theories, it says to me that there feels to be a lack of trust in this country.
And empathy.
Lack of trust and empathy, which brings me all the way back to Trump. I don't think the reaction to this happens if Donald Trump and MAGA have not spent years saying that everything they find inconvenient or didn't like or didn't believe was fake or rigged or staged, not simply asking for more evidence, but that they reflexively say, no, it's not true. It's rigged. It's fake. QAnon, Pizzagate, January 6th, 2020 election, a Virginia gerrymandering referendum. It's all fake. It's all rigged. It's all staged. It's all a hoax. Russiagate investigation. This is, as far as I'm concerned, a direct A to B straight line consequence of Trump and MAGA pumping conspiracy theories into the American body politic for years. And now, again, if you look on social media, it's not just liberals and progressives. It's an increasing number. Andrew Wilson himself acknowledges that many right-wingers are feeding into this as well. And it's turning on Trump and MAGA. So there we have it. The last thing I'll say is I do not believe that this was fake or staged or a hoax, just like I don't believe that about Butler. If anybody wants to make that claim, they need to show me the overwhelming evidence. But for the reasons that CNN article, beautifully articulates, it's just so improbable as to be virtually impossible. That's where I stand on it. If you disagree, that's fine. You can let me know in the comments. But I will not believe or claim that this is staged or fake until I see compelling evidence suggesting it. In the absence of that, I take these things at face value, and we will continue to look at the independent reporting on this from credible journalists at NBC, ABC, CNN, MS Now, the New York Times, Reuters, the Associated Press, and others. If you don't trust Donald Trump and MAGA and Fox News, I totally understand. You're not obligated to. But there are other credible journalists and reporters and sources out there, and you should turn to them instead. But again, the chickens have come home to roost, and Trump and MAGA are now being eaten alive by the very conspiracism that they've relied on so damn long, and they hate it. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.